All right, hey everyone, and today we're doing a book review on a fantastic book called What It Takes by Stephen Schwarzman. He's one of the founders of Blackstone. I have my beautiful lady here, Desiree. How you doing?
Hey, good. How are you?
Good, good. So you read this book? I think you liked it.
Yeah, it was a very good book, especially if you're trying to be big in real estate. Although he was big in a lot of things, but yeah.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I think there was a lot of points in the book. It having you go through it, I remember I read it, I don't even know, maybe like about a year ago or so, and then I
Mhm.
saw that you were going through it, and it made me want to kind of do a little quick review and see, because there were so many nuggets in the book. I mean, wasn't it kind of
Yeah,
fun?
yeah. He actually goes through some of his own life lessons that he learned in the book, as he tells his stories,
Hmm,
right?
hmm.
And of course, there's always some that just kind of speak out to you, because there's so many in his book. But there's some that really stuck with us, I think,
Yeah.
is what we wanted to discuss.
Yeah, and then I mean there's also some areas in the book that are pretty funny because he's talking about some of the I want to say some embarrassing moments that he had of things that happened to him in his life that he shares, which at the end of the book, how he was eating, he had hired a chef to cook Asian food for him. And then
Uh,
the chef was actually not really a great Asian chef. He was actually uh, buying the kind of, what do they call the
this is
prepared foods? Frozen.
frozen dishes
Yeah.
and
And
warming
the
them up.
and warming them up. And then his like he ended up dating a woman, starting to date a woman. And then she went into the kitchen to see what he was doing. And then he said,
Yeah, and
wait.
he found all the frozen dinner. Yeah.
I mean, so fantastic, just a great story, a lot of challenges. So let's go over some of the notes. We read a lot of books, so one of the things to take advantage of is your public library. If you're not
Yes.
taking advantage of that, you can go physically to get books at the public library, but also there's some apps that we use, right? What are the apps called?
Yeah, and the apps are connected with the library.
Hmm.
So one of them is Hoopla, that we use. And this is especially when we're using audiobooks.
Hmm.
You can find where sometimes, you don't have a lot of time to sit down and read a book.
Hmm.
But audiobooks are great and they have them for free.
Yep.
That you can access them through your online library. Sometimes they have the relationship with Hoopla where you put in your library card and all that. So
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of benefits. You have Hoopla. There's another one called Libby that's coming up,
Libby, that's
which it
right.
used to be Overdrive, but I think they're going away with that.
Right.
And then also we I subscribe to Audible, which kind of has a lot of benefits too. So check all of that out for that. Now let's get to the book, right? Because we this is a lot of good notes here. So would you like to start?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. So one of the takeaways I had from the book, and I'm quoting, and so you may see me looking down, was him saying, if you want something badly enough, you can find a way. You can create it out of nothing. And before you know it, there it is. Wanting something isn't enough. If you're going to pursue difficult goals, you're inevitably going to fall short sometimes. It's one of those costs of ambition.
Mm.
So I really like that quote, just because I think sometimes when when we see people who have been successful, we just think, oh, they went on this, upward track and they
Yeah,
just were
yeah, man,
successful.
just flatten it.
Yeah.
Close your eyes and boom.
Yeah, exactly. But no one really understands the middle of it, right? The starting point, number one, is trying to start getting into the goals you're trying to achieve, whatever those may be, business goals, school goals, whatever you have. But then, in between, there is these constant challenges that you're having to overcome that come in your way.
Mhm,
And it's one of those things that nothing is easy. If it
mhm,
was easy, everybody would be doing it. But I haven't seen anyone go after a goal or trying to accomplish something that didn't come across some type of hardship or barrier that they had to get over. And I think what separates people sometimes with being successful is just the persistence of it, right?
mhm, mhm,
And I know I've gone through some time like, oh man, I don't know if I want to keep doing this, right?
mhm,
But you if you keep going at it, I think at some point you do arrive
Yeah, yeah.
to achieve, if not all your goals, a portion of your goals, which sometimes may even change or alter how you go through this journey that you
Hmm.
have in your life. So that really spoke out to me, just to keep that in mind, that yeah, it's okay, you may fail, you may fall short, but just kind of keep going.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I think that's part of it. And one thing, a couple of points you mentioned. I mean, of course, I get the, set the goal, go for it, persist, to be able to achieve it, right? Because if you don't persist, it's really not possible, right? Goals are hard. Um, I would say 99% of the time, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be really difficult. If not, other people, anybody could do it, right? But then the other part of it is not only that the goal, maybe you'll achieve it, but sometimes you fall short, right? And especially when you're trying to grow and have bigger goals, and that's okay. Think, like, to look at it from a learning point of view, right? Like at the beginning when he started, um it goes with my point where he left Lehman Brothers, where he was working,
Yeah.
and then he started a fund kind of advising on mergers and acquisitions, right? So Steve Schwarzman, he's one of the founders of Blackstone. They work on Wall Street. They were handling mergers and acquisitions. Now they're really a big private equity firm in so many areas, right? Real estate, business acquisition. They bought Hilton, etc. So he goes in and he starts raising money. Funny thing is, he did something pretty crazy. He wanted to raise the largest fund ever raised, or one of the, and I think it was like $1 billion or something like that, if not much larger than that. But it was one of the biggest. And he raised funds actually from insurance companies, which insurance companies, they collect money and then they invest with different people and etc. So one of the companies, I think, was Presidential Life, and he made an investment, one of the first ones, that the investment failed, right? So the people, they didn't necessarily lose all their money because it's a fund and they didn't just put all the money in one investment, but it looked bad, right? You just raised the fund, and one of the first investments you did, you failed, right? uh but what he did was he got scolded by the head of investments of Presidential Life, and really, I think in a disrespectful way. Willie was treated like a child and yelled at. He said his family didn't even yell at him, but he took the situation to create systems in his business to prevent that from happening again. So failures teach us lessons that successes don't teach us, and that was a great point that I thought
Yeah,
was
and I
powerful.
remember that he had actually had two analysts. I think this is the story you're talking
Yeah.
about, and he he went with one of the other analysts, because the one that was saying they should do the investment, because he knew about the company and he's been following them, and da 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 da. The other person who didn't know too much, he didn't feel as comfortable, but he learned it shouldn't be as emotional, right?
Yeah.
And so then that's why he decided to build a board or people. It would be
Mhm.
more than just his
I
decision.
think it was investment committees is what he
Yeah, a
called it, but
committee. Where it wouldn't be just his decision anymore, and everybody would have certain questions they would have to answer about a business. So it's a little bit more uniformed, and it's just not, oh yeah, well, because I think have more information, more.
yeah,
So
you won.
it may not necessarily be the right decision to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. One last point, kind of just on this one, that also I got from this, is that it's kind of a little bit of a lesson on humility, because he could
Yeah.
have just responded back and said, "Hey, you don't need to yell at me like that," and screw you or whatever. But he kind of just took it all in, he digested it, and then he had a clear mind, and then created those systems. So also kind of a lesson there in business, that no matter how successful, you need to make sure to stay humble, to learn and then improve.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also something else that goes along with that, is kind of finding, we're talking about businesses, and he, went into different businesses, as we know, he REITs and real estate and even chemical companies. I mean, they were buying a lot of
Yeah,
different
yeah. I
companies.
mean, it was very diverse.
Yeah. And in the beginning, he kind of mentions that he met with one of the former governors of New York. and he asked him, I'm graduating from college, what should I do from now? Which seems to be a question that a lot of people ask.
Yeah, I think it was Avril Harriman.
Yeah. So I think that's like one of the top questions. What do I do from now? What do I do from here? Right.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I really liked about the response is he basically told him, get into something that is right for you, not so much what everybody else is telling you to get into.
That's good advice.
And I just think that is important for a lot of people to know, just because I know sometimes we look for answers from other people to tell us where we should go.
Preach.
Which is normal. We've all done that. I've done it. It's not anything wrong. We're just trying to find our way. But at the same time, it may not be something that's suitable for you, is what someone is recommending you for you to do. So for example, we're in multifamily acquisitions and disposition and asset management. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's for everybody, so I think you have to go through some of those pains trying to find out what you want to do and try different things to find what is going to be right for you, because just as the book kind of goes into the flow of it, once you find it, that's what you're going to be persistently trying to achieve. So I really like that point from the book as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic point. Especially, I even think, just to kind of add to it, is also what we see sometimes on social media. It was like, oh yeah, this person's doing X, Y, Z. I should be doing that, or I should be at their level, or whatever. And it's like, yeah, I mean, number one, social media doesn't teach you the full picture, right?
A lot of filters.
A lot of filters. Everybody's showing like kind of the best part of the social media part, so then that creates a whole other set of problems. But then also, like, find what fits with you, right? Instead of what the other person's doing. If it aligns with you, great. But if it doesn't, go for it.
So. Yeah, I completely agree.
What do you have? What's your next one?
Oh, okay. Okay. I think one of the other ones that he was kind of talking about is what we've already talked about a little bit, about just being an entrepreneur, how every entrepreneur knows the feeling, the moment of despair. And this is kind of what he quotes in the book, right? That moment of despair, when the only thing you are aware of, it's giant gap between where you find yourself in the life and business you imagine. So once you succeed, people only see the success. If you fail, they only see the failure.
I always knew that you could do it, Desiree. Once you succeed, right? But in the moment, in the process, nobody says.
Yeah, exactly. Because they don't see the turning points.
No,
right.
They don't.
So that's something that we've already kind of reflected on, and he said it's one of his important lessons in business and life that he learned as well. So
okay. One thing that I actually like that they mentioned kind of in passing briefly, but there was a moment when a Bank of China or some type of Chinese investor, sovereign wealth fund, had invested in their fund, and they were doing consistent dividends, and this was right before the Great Recession. And they were in a position where everybody was stopping dividends to conserve cash, because it was like the world was ending. Everybody was thinking, right? And he thought that they should do the same, that they should stop. But then he spoke to his board, and several people on the board says, no, I think, number one, they just invested with us. If we stop dividends now, we really don't need to. We're not in a position that we're in trouble. So we shouldn't stop dividends, because they're expecting that, and that could open up in the future more opportunities for us. So to protect his reputation of the way that they did business, they continued to do their dividends, and I think it was a pretty big dividend they were going to pay. It was like $50 million. So you need to look at that when you're making your decisions. Sometimes it may not be the best financial decision for you and your company, but is it the best thing that's, number one, ethical, and number two, that is going to be positive for your reputation. It's going to pay dividends down the road, because then they did so much more business in China, and then he did kind of the nonprofit work that he's doing in China to today. So I think that was a good nugget there.
Yeah, I think he was really trying to own on do what you promised to keep that relationship.
Exactly.
Especially when it was such a big relationship that they were building.
Yes,
So.
yeah. Yeah.
And they did that quite a few times. They also did that in Japan as well, Japanese company.
Okay.
Where the Japanese company was trying to get into the American market. But they were still, Schwarzman was still raising funds for their own fund. And what he said is, hey, if you invest in us, we'll help you get into the American market. So they kind of leveraged each other in that way in order for them to both get something they needed at that time. And that was one of his lessons that he was trying to say is, try to figure out a solution to each person's problems and how they can be fixed. And that was one of the ways he also did that. So seems like it was a mission of the company.
Yeah, and I mean, and that was a fantastic lesson on cooperation, right? Of working together to achieve everyone's goals, right? And I think if one of the biggest things I've been reading about is that cooperation is just so powerful. If you can work together with other people to everybody achieves their goals, you can achieve just so much more. So that's a fantastic
example. Yeah, I agree.
There's one that this one I would say probably cost him the most money. This is one of the biggest mistakes I think that he made in his business. And this was the one where he didn't renegotiate the contract with Larry Fink.
You love that part.
I love that one, right? So Larry Fink is the founder of BlackRock, which is one of the largest asset managers in the world. They manage funds for so many organizations. And he said, I stood my ground on dilution of our equity because I considered it a moral principle to respect the terms of the original deal. He said, instead, I should have recognized that when a situation changes and a business is doing extremely well, sometimes you have to make accommodations. So the background of the story is he started Blackstone. Later on, Larry Fink came on and they had Larry Fink come in and be a partner. He was going to start his own asset management firm, wealth management within the organization. And they were going to grow it. But then I don't know what the agreement was, but Larry Fink was going to get a certain amount of ownership and Schwarzman another. And Larry Fink went up to Steven and said, the terms that we agreed don't seem to be fair. I think we should renegotiate them because this is going to be a bigger business or whatever. I don't know how the conversation went. But Steven said no. He said, I think we should stick to the original terms. And what happened is Larry Fink left and started BlackRock on his own. And now I think they manage trillions of dollars, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. But he even admitted, Steven, that it was a mistake. So sometimes you need to really look at the situation and put yourself in the other person's point of view and see if what they're saying has merit and then take your ego out of this hide and say, oh, we already agreed to that, but wait, do we need to adjust?
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes back to, I don't know if that was before or after the Japanese deal that he did, but just as he was trying to find a solution to each other's problems, I feel like that was one of the areas that also could have been applied to where, someone's coming to you and, you can look over it. And I know you wanted to stick to the contract, but what is the value if they leave at that point?
Exactly.
Right. And I think that's what you have to take a step back sometimes and look at that aspect. But I also think that goes into another segment where he says with investors, whenever he does a deal, it's not about getting the lowest or cheapest price ever. It's paying a fair price. And then finding how that value will be in the future. And I think that kind of goes in a way because, fairly, we have this contract. You're coming back to renegotiate, where's this value of you staying in my company, in the future.
Yep.
But he also talks about when they were buying real estate as well. A lot of times investors would, and still do, I used to be one of them, want to get the cheapest price, the lowest price you can, to kind of have that equity when you go into it. But no deal means you don't get anything,
Yeah.
right? So he would still offer a fair price for the company, but he would evaluate it for its future equity.
Mhm.
What can we fix in deficiencies within the operations of the management of it?
Mhm.
What are some things we can add to it? And from the deals he speaks about in the books, because you don't always hear all of them.
Mhm. Yeah, of course.
But he's come out 3-4 times more than what his expectations were on deals where he like, no, I'm just going to give a fair price and I'm going to get the future value of it.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to take, you know, every piece of meat that's on the bone, right? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Leave some for the other person.
Mhm.
Get your deal done. Of course, it needs to be the right deal for you. It needs to make sense. But if you're going to make a great return on it, why do you need to kind of keep beating the other person up? Who knows? And I think this is a great example from Warren Buffett. Tons of people come to him they bring him deals. And I think that's the same case between another person. It's a small world. Your reputation is going to get around. They're going to say, oh, this person beat me up on this deal. It was really hard to work with them. Or they're going to say, oh, no, they were really hard, easy to work with. We made a fair agreement. And who knows, maybe you'll get another deal out of it. Right.
Right.
But fantastic story. You got another one?
I think he kind of just talks. What I liked about this comment was him talking about how they overcame so many rejections and failures when they were trying to raise funds for their company. And it's interesting to see that they were on top when they were working at Lehman, and they had all these contacts. And he speaks about, they knew all these people, and when they try to go out and start their own business, it was like nobody knew them anymore. Nobody wanted to give them the time of the day. And so it's interesting to see that. But he talks more about how he did so many presentations, and then he even went to Saudi Arabia, and he didn't get anyone to fund him.
Wow.
And he talks about how he was telling someone, and he's like, to be successful, you have to put yourself in situations and places you have no right being in.
I love that.
And shake your head and learn from your own stupidity, but through sheer will, you will wear the world down, and it gives you what you want.
Oh, that is.
And I
great.
just thought that was a really powerful quote.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if you keep going at it, you're gonna get what you want. And they kind of speak more like, people talk about the universe, how things start coming to you.
Yep.
And I feel like that quote kind of goes into that, where at the end of the day, we talk a lot about luck, but I forgot who wrote the quote, but they said that luck really finds them when you're going and going so hard in your journey to achieve what you want to achieve, right? You start finding luck along the way.
Yeah,
Really what happens. So
well, there's so many quotes about that one. But the one that comes up is a golfer, and I think his name is Gary Player. I'm not a big golfer, so forgive me if I butchered his name, but he said, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Yeah, that's another great
one.
Yeah.
And then I think he used to go and hit golf balls in the morning, and then his hands would be a little bit bloody from hitting golf balls, and then he would go again and hit golf balls. And that's a story in so many areas of life. You have to really persist, and then eventually, the universe really starts working in your favor. But there's so many things to it, right? Your skills get better, right, as you persist, and then you start developing a reputation with your circle, and things just start lining up. And then wait a minute, you're the guy that you're the multifamily person, or you're this other person. So 100%.
Yeah.
Support that. So this one is another one. Regardless of how you begin your careers, it is important to realize that your life will not necessarily move in a straight line. You have to recognize that the world is an unpredictable place. Sometimes even gifted people such as yourselves will get knocked back on their heels. Kind of just another one about persistence. Here, this one's a good one about investors. So those of you out there that are looking to raise money, investors, this is a quote: investors are always looking for great investments, the easier you make it for them, the better for
Mhm.
everyone, right?
Yeah.
So what I took out from this quote is, and I like this, also kind of reminds me of Robert Kiyosaki in his book, Retire Young, Retire Rich. And it said that there's a world out there where it's unlimited capital and there's just unlimited opportunity. And looking at it from investors, there's tons of money out there. A lot of people have capital, a lot of people have money, but frankly, they're not comfortable just investing it with anyone, right? Who would, right? Man, if you had $1 million, would you just give it to someone? Who knows if you're going to get it back or not, right? But if you, number one, develop a reputation of being a good business person, you know what you're doing, right? People do business because they like and trust you. Number one, you know what you're doing. You're gonna get them their money back. Number two, you're a trustworthy person. Over time, if you continue to do that, you start developing a reputation, and investors, oh yeah, this is easy. This is an easy decision. This person has done this before. They've partnered with someone, they work for someone. I'm comfortable giving them my capital so I can do this deal. So that's something for you to consider, and to, when you're out there, if you're trying to raise capital, that it's going to be difficult at the beginning, but once you start developing this reputation of doing the right things, eventually it'll start going in favor.
Yeah, and that goes into his journey too. It was very hard in the beginning, but then once he started getting one person, the other person, oh yeah, well they did 10, 10 million. Oh, okay, well I'll do 10, I'll do 15, right?
Yeah.
And then everybody wants to start investing at that point, right? So I think that's a great point. In the beginning it's hard, but as you go through it, it starts to get a lot easier to do it.
Yeah. 100%.
And I think that kind of shows too, with how you raise a lot of funds too.
Yeah, initially it was really difficult. So when one of the things is, when we started investing, I had been flipping houses for like a few years, right? For about 5 years or so. And I was part of an organization, which is CFRI, which had a lot of people that were investors, and some of them had money, they had capital, they had lenders. And so I had a lot of relationships with people that had potential capital, and I reached out to a lot of people, and a lot of people, I didn't have a background in multifamily. So a lot of people said no, or they didn't return calls, etc. But a few people that I had done business with, they knew me and they trusted me. One of our investors, she said, Denny, I'll invest with you. A lot of people told me not to invest. That's what she said. A lot of people told me not to invest, but I will invest with you because you've paid me on time. And then whenever we had a deal, you always had great communication. And for that reason, I'm going to invest with you. And then from then, she's invested with us, I think, on 4 deals. And then now we're to the point where we don't really have enough deals to allocate the capital. That we have people that reach out and say, hey, I have this much money available, I have this capital available. And because we're, the position in our business, but that didn't happen overnight. That took some time to develop.
Yeah, right. Yeah, doing this. You started before I did, so you were doing almost 8, 9 years, 10 years then.
Well, now I think it's about close to 13.
Yeah, look at that.
Close to 13. So yeah, I mean, so many more points. I don't want to bore you and then not get you to read the book. I mean, if you can have the opportunity to listen to it or take advantage of it.
One last point I want to make though.
Please.
I encourage you to definitely read the book, because there's a lot of points that we're not going to go over, but I just want to talk about the scale of the business that he built. And at the end of the book, he kind of summarizes where he started from. And he started the business with someone else, Peter, a partner. They both put in $400,000, $200,000 each, and of startup capital to help them get an office and start their journey in 1985. And then now they have over $500 billion of assets under management in 2019, a growth rate of about 50% a year since they started.
Wow.
And I think that's just amazing.
Yeah, no, and I think they're pushing $1 trillion now. We're in 2023. So.
Yeah.
No, fantastic story.
Yeah, so definitely listen or go out to read the book.
Yes,
it's a great book. Oh, there we go. It's a great book to read. to go over the lessons that he learned in his pursuit of excellence, as it says.
There you go. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. This is Denny Troncoso, and this is Desiree. And we'll see you guys next time.
All right.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.